Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you listen to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I will be in the driver's seat once again for today's show. And we have a great show for you because we have a great guest. Our guest today is Matt Terrio. Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet, Josh. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Totally my pleasure, sir. So before we get going, and I forget to do it, why don't you tell everybody listening what it is that you do?
Yeah, so we show people how to invest in real estate, busy professionals specifically, so they can retire early. And for those that don't want to do all the heavy lifting, my wife manages the side of the business that actually does it for them.
Okay, so not only asset acquisition and training on wealth building, but also the management, asset management. Good stuff.
Yeah, we've got a turnkey done for you model. So, people that are, they're too busy or they just don't want to do all that heavy lifting, that my wife will go and do it. She'll go source the property. She'll go ahead and arrange the to be fixed up. They'll put the tenant in place. They'll coordinate the property management. And then she'll even arrange the financing and then just kind of hand it over on a silver platter to an investor as a cash producing asset.
Cool. So turnkey assets. So basically taking real estate, which is on the messier side of the clean versus messy investment side, and cleaning that up and making it a little bit more truly passive investment.
Correct. At least the building part. I mean, passive, that's the operative word, right?
Right. It's never going to be quite as passive as putting your money in the bank account and seeing the minuscule rate of return you're going to get there. But the wealth building component is so much better. The inflation insulation is so much better that what you're getting for the little bit of extra work, if the property is being managed by someone else,
for sure, you get it.
Makes it a very good deal still.
Yep.
No, I am a converted believer in real estate, so we are on the same page. I run a real estate investment fund myself, so
okay.
You're on
it's really kind of over history. It's kind of shown right now, and it's becoming more and more apparent and more common knowledge. I think that you have to incorporate it somewhere into your financial plan, or you're just not going to have a real chance at any sort of real freedom.
Sure.
Most people just don't make enough to save enough for compound interest to do its magic.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's also that, especially in the most recent environment, the inflation protection is such a big deal because unlike most other investment types that are out there, it's a tangible asset that has utility in society, and therefore its value is going to be tied to how the public values the money. The reason why we have things cost so much more is not that prices have gone up, it's that the value of the money has gone down and we need more money to buy the exact same thing. Well, with your stock, that means your stock has to, if the value of money went down 25, your stock's got to go back up 25% to stand still. Well, the real estate naturally did that. Real estate actually out-appreciated the inflation once again, which is historically what we've always anticipated it does. We've always seen it do, historically what we can anticipate it doing whenever there's an inflationary environment. So that component of tangible asset in a portfolio seems to be an important thing if you want to make sure that you're keeping up with the Joneses as far as the value of money going down.
For sure. I mean, the utility aspect of it'll never be worth zero. And supply and demand is certainly in its favor.
Oh, my God.
With the ability to use leverage, now that puts you on the right side of the inflation equation. So it's like it's really tough to lose if you get the management done right. I always say this: every time I've ever lost in real estate, it's either been by bad property manager or a bad contractor. And so, to me, my conclusion is that hey, the real estate is safe. It's the people that are risky. You know?
Yeah, it's what we do with it after that's the problem.
Right,
No,
right.
the thing. I mean, I like to say that you win three ways on inflation with real estate. The property appreciates as the value of the money goes down. So those things like cancel each other out. So at least you're staying at scratch. But if
Hmm.
it's income producing, guess what happens to the rents? The value of money goes down. The rents also go up. So I'm double dipping on the same inflation. And
Yep.
then the third scoop of ice cream, was as an ice cream fan, the more the ice cream, the better. So three scoops, I'm a happy camper. The third scoop of ice cream is I take the bank's money out today, and I agree to give them a certain number of dollars for
Hmm.
the next 30 years.
Yep.
But the value of those dollars is going down, and the bank's eating that loss, not me. My
Yep.
rents are going up faster than normal, and the bank's eating the fact that they're getting $1,000, but only buys $800 worth of stuff.
Hmm.
And when you
Inflation
realize
is it's an equal opportunity money destroyer. So,
it
would you rather have
is,
inflation destroy your money or someone else's? So I was like, well, let's use someone else's to buy the appreciating asset. So yeah, you're totally right.
and it supercharges the returns on the real estate. This is the reason why the Black Rocks of the world and all came in and bought real estate at 5 and 6 caps for these apartment buildings, these 5 and 6% rates of return, because they knew those rents weren't going to stay put and the property values wouldn't stay put. And
Yep.
lo and behold, because they
Yep.
could pick up a history book and they know what real estate does in inflation, they made a lot of money buying
And they're
all
going to
that real
continue
estate.
to make it. They're not changing their tune or course at
Oh,
all.
all right. Why
Yep.
get out? You have the assets now, and the assets have tons of equity. Why do it? So let me ask you this, Matt. What got you started doing what you're doing?
Well, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life in the music business,
Okay.
and it did really well for myself. We had a small
Transition.
little. Say again.
That's a common transition.
Yeah,
Marine to music.
to real estate, right? Everyone always asks, "How did you do that?"
What a
um,
trifecta.
it was, and I did really well, and was kind of living the dream. I had a small little record label, but we had major label global distribution, and I had like 4 employees, and they were all my buddies, and you know. That was just that we had a nice recipe, a nice formula, and I had made my millions by the time I was 30 years old and just having a blast. And then this little thing called the digital download came along and just kind of crushed all the music stores. I mean, we don't even know what a music store is anymore, right? Or, uh, so, at the age of 34, without thinking that that gravy train was ever going to end, I very quickly, like in 6 months, was completely out of business. Like just people stopped buying, and at the time, we had no idea what was happening. It in
Yeah.
hindsight, it's crystal clear. I mean, like we can see it play by play as it unfolded. But we were in an underground hip hop type of music, and it seemed like all the underground audiences, whether it was underground hip hop or underground rock or underground dance music, that those underground independent audiences really embraced the digital download before general public did, before the general
Sure.
population did. And we really felt it way before anyone even knew what was happening. I mean, we were out of business before iTunes was even a thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, would
um,
definitely I would think statistically the early adopter would be make up a greater portion of that submarket. That's really a cool point. I mean, I love
mhm,
figuring out what the data tells us about people groups and the assumptions you could make about people, because that's what good business is done, is making assumptions about your customers. You
mhm,
assume what they want and try to provide it for them and anticipate them and their needs. So yeah, that's a
yep.
that's a very cool thing.
I mean, I couldn't imagine someone wanting to buy music and not go in and thumb through the bins and actually smell the vinyl and the dust and the records. Like that was like just such a part of the experience. And you know, now our grandparents are downloading music. In fact, they're not even downloading them anymore. They're just streaming it. Nobody even owns the music anymore. You don't have a collection anymore, right? Like it's just totally different.
You
So
pay
that
for
put me out of business, and the wife didn't really appreciate that, so she took off, and then I got left with millions of debt from the music business. All not necessarily how much I had at the moment, but it was projected debt based off of royalties if that music continued to sell. So I had to file a huge bankruptcy with between the personal stuff with the wife and then the professional stuff, and started life over from scratch at the age of 34. I was bagging groceries,
oh
and
wow.
I just wasn't qualified to do anything else, at least in the job world. And so I was there for about 6 months before I realized, hey, I better get off my ass and go do something. And I just really missed my money. I really, really missed my money. I went from a seven-figure personal income year to $7 an hour,
Yeah.
and I was just like, okay, I got to learn something new. What pays well?
But
And
what would you say? I mean, what percentage of it was emotional, and what percentage of it was actual
as far as
real?
which part, the money
As
part?
far as what put you in that place for 6 months? I mean, what made you live there so long? Was it that
Oh,
losing everything was kind of a shot to the ego and kind of put you on your ass a little bit?
yeah. Also, as I think I was stunned for a while. Like I was like,
Yeah.
how did I get here? Like what happened? I remember, I mean, bagging groceries, going the thing on paper or plastic, and then I'm 34 years old, and my high school sweetheart comes through the line, and I'm like those are just
Mm,
gut checks on a daily basis, and
yeah. That's wish I wore an athletic cup that day. Wow.
yeah, right, totally, and but I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I've made a whole lot of money and was very successful in most people's eyes without ever having to set goals, without ever having to go to a formal training, with ever having to like be disciplined in anything. I was just very fortunate what I did. People were willing to pay for it, and now I'm here at this grocery store. Like, oh, I guess I have to have a plan now,
Yeah.
right? And I have to have daily habits, and I have to execute, and I have to do all this stuff. And it took me a long time to just kind of figure that out. And while
Sure.
I was bagging groceries, I'm out, applying for insurance sales and car sales and whatever I could get into. I was in a slew of little multi-level marketing things, and finally the most unlikely mentor, the grocery store manager, who was also 34, was managing the
Mm,
store. He'd been pushing carts there since he was 16, and he was just, and this was like the real epiphany. And I've told this story a million times because it's really kind of become the foundation of why I do what I do now. Is that he said, Matt, if you want your money back, it's probably going to be real estate because average guys like us, this really is the final frontier where an average guy has a legitimate shot at creating some real wealth. You
yeah.
know, you don't have to have this amazing invention or a business. You don't have to have this amazing talent or entertainer or an athlete or anything like that. It's just like you can go there and it's very, very dependable. And he was very proud of what he had accomplished over the 18 years that he had been there. And he had a little photo album. Like, do we even know what photo albums are anymore? But he had a
Hmm.
little photo album, and he had pictures of his apartment buildings like they were his kids. And he had been able to get like four of these things while he was working there. And he was
Nice.
2 years away from being able to withdraw from his pension. He's going to be able to take 70% of his salary as a pension for the rest of his life. And he showed me, he
Nice.
said, look, by these apartment buildings, the cash flow from the apartment buildings are going to pay me more than what my 70% of my pension that took me 18 years to create. And he said, and I did this like in the last 6 years. And I was just kind of like, wow. And he gave me the little book. I doubt you ever heard of it, called Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Totally.
And he said, and I read that book, and I was just introduced to this whole concept of passive income. And
Two most beautiful words in the English language, right there, man.
I speak English. I can put the word passive and income together and kind of figure out what it is. But to actually pursue it with the intention, that was a whole far out concept. And having been there, and I was able to escape the rat race in about 3.5 years. I wasn't rich by any means, but I didn't have to work. And having been in two places when I was in the music business where I had chunks of money in big bank account balances, and then, but I still had to go to work every day, and
Hmm.
now, not having that much money, but not having to go to work, that was much, much better. It really
Yeah, yeah.
was. It was much better. And so that was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to pursue that. And instead of, chasing my lifestyle with income, I'm going to have, what was the other way around? I'm just going to keep my expenses below my passive income, and I can increase my lifestyle as I increase the passive portion of the income. And
Oh,
that was like,
very much richest man
freedom.
in Babylon, right there. That's very much what the richest man of Babylon
Is
is all
it?
about.
I've heard that book so many times. I've never read that one.
It's
But
it's done in a narrative fashion.
mhm.
It gets to be pretty redundant, but honestly, it's a worthwhile one to read just from seeing somebody work a great life story or a great life advice into such a
Mhm.
narrative style. It's very nicely done.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I've heard so many people, great people, recommend it, and now I have another person like
very
yourself.
simple book. Yeah, no,
Awesome.
it's very simple.
So that was it. And by the time I was started life over basically at 34, and was essentially retired at 39, and then got bored of that in about 30 days
Uh,
because when you
Surprised it
retire,
took you that long.
say
Yeah,
that again.
I'm surprised it took you that long. When you're used to moving and
Yeah,
shaking, everything stops. You're almost waiting
yep.
for the other shoe to drop.
It's very lonely when you retire young too, because everyone else is going to work all day long.
You got
And
to take a
you can only go to the
pickleball.
gym so much. You can only watch so many movies. You can only go to the driving range so much, and then you can only go to so many happy hours until and that was kind of like what my day was for a whole month. And I was like, okay, this is terrible. So
No,
I
I
just
mean
thought about
it's that fulfillment, right? I mean, our
it.
work is part of what gives us reason to be. And when you do work that you love every day, man, that's the real. You have the money. If you have the money,
Hmm.
the back end is taken care of, and you can go in there and do stuff you love every single day. Well, man, that's just freaking knocking out of the park.
Yep,
That's the dream right there, right?
yep, yep. And so I was kind of was you have a lot of time to think, and I was just like, wow, where would I be today if the record business didn't go out of business, and I never met that grocery store manager, I never got that book. Like, what would have happened? Like, I just learned about this whole concept by chance. Like, no one ever taught it to me intentionally. So I was like, okay. I went to this little seminar thing, and they said, wealthy people get wealthy for this reason, and my ears perked up, and I don't know if it was true or not, but it kind of seems like there's some validity to it. They said they learn how to do one thing really, really well, then they create multiple streams of income from that one thing that they know how to do. And kind of the first recommendation was to go into consulting or teaching or coaching of some sort. And then that's when I decided, okay, let's go ahead and do this thing. And at that time, I was introduced to this concept, these membership websites, where people you
Mm-hmm.
can put a bunch of videos in a thing, and people come and pay you $100 a month to get access to it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, hey, that's another form of passive income. Let's go for
That's it.
that too, right? And then I started that up, and that had a nice little ring to it, and I had two streams of income, and then the education part just kind of took off. I had written a book about my life. It was kind of half autobiographical, half personal development of how I started over in life. And I just landed on some website on how to self promote a book, and one of those items was to start a podcast, and that was in 2009. And I didn't even know what a
Mm,
podcast was. Nobody did.
yeah.
But I just kind of checked every single thing that told me to do to self promote my book. And so I started the podcast, and that podcast it was a perfect time in history. It just exploded, and then that coincided and really exploded the education business, and it was all just a total happenstance.
Love that, man. I love it.
Yeah,
The path I am walking myself as we speak is much the same stuff. Just got the last book published a few months ago from McGraw Hill,
oh,
and
congrats.
yeah, no, thanks, man.
It's nice to have those things done, isn't it?
It is. You know, when they got the book deal, and there's like you got to get it done, and I know my stuff. I mean, they speak all the time, so I know my stuff. But then
Mhm.
they give you the book deal, and you're like, oh man, and I got to write this thing. I mean, I've written one before. I mean, I've written a
Mhm.
lot of textbooks, but I mean, I've written a popular book before. But I got it done in about 6 weeks from start to finish.
That's
Right,
amazing. That's amazing.
it
Isn't
was
it
there.
funny? One thing about the book that I think I'm three now, four now. I just handed what I consider my last one. I just handed it in. But
It's
it's
always
funny.
the last one. By the
I
way.
know,
It's
right?
always
I'm gonna come with another idea at some point. But it's funny when you write a book, like when you think you're about 90% done, you're really halfway done. You know,
yeah.
like you think you're
I hear that.
almost there, and like no, you're just halfway. So
Yeah, no, and I mean the tough part is having to go back and rewrite stuff that you felt like you said pretty well the first time, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, I could probably do this better, and
yeah,
yeah, no, polishing
and
it
then
up.
your views of the world will change while you're writing a book,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Your opinions will change, and you'll have to go back and wait a minute, that's not actually what I believe anymore. I have to go back and fix that, and then you got to make sure that there's congruency all the way through the book that it all matches. And now that you read this book,
well,
you know,
that's the benefits of writing in 6 weeks. I didn't have a whole lot of changing going on, but I will say there were things that I definitely it helps you crystallize your own thoughts better.
Hmm.
And there were definitely some things that I discovered that were kind of new takes on stuff that I've been talking about for years. And
Hmm.
I'm like, no, this is actually a better way of thinking about what this
Yeah.
makes this more crystal clear for people. And so, yeah, there's definitely even some self discovery in there of
Yeah,
things
it's very cathartic doing it, right?
yeah, I think it's a good process. Like everybody should try to get to know themselves better by writing their thoughts down like that.
Everybody's got a bestseller in them. Everybody does. I firmly believe that. I was in the music business, and everyone's got at least one hit song. And I think when it comes to a book, it's the same thing.
Good stuff. What do you like best about what you're doing, Matt?
What do I like best about it? Um, I've been really fortunate on that the internet has evolved into what it has evolved into because coming from the music business, there's a huge creative side to me. And real estate, I mean, I've really been attracted to the creative investing and the creative financing and the seller financing. So I've really embraced that. But just the way that I get to market properties, the way that I get to market myself through music and video, like on a YouTube channel, that's kind of like the fun part for me that has me wake up every day and excited to go to work. And then probably the most rewarding though is and it's when a student comes back and they actually did what you told them to do and it worked for them. That's
Yeah,
pretty remarkable.
when somebody's life is better because of
Yeah,
something that you said or did.
we had a lady come through just last, I don't know, last month, 2 months ago, and she was working with Mercedes actually. And she came by and says, I'm in Vegas, I want to stop by and say hello. And we'd probably sold her, I don't know, 16, 17 properties over the last 5 or 6 years. And she came through and she says, I just want you guys to know that I retired and I quit my job today. And I could have done it a year ago, but I just still didn't believe it. So I had to run a simulation. And so I just wanted to live off my real estate for a whole year. And so she took her paycheck, and her paycheck went into an account that she never even touched. And so it's just
Nice.
she could actually live on it. And so that was like, when we sat here and talked to her and her husband for probably 4 hours. That was pretty remarkable to see something that you created based off of your efforts that you get up and do every day.
Absolutely. You were the store owner to her,
Mm-hmm.
the store manager to her.
Yep.
With this investment information, that's basically what it is. It's this passing down, passing along of this information because there's really not a mainstream place where this information exists. I mean, it exists in books and stuff like that, but unless somebody hands you a Rich Dad Poor Dad or a book like the one
Mm-hmm.
that I wrote, or if you don't get that, well, you're never going to know this stuff. It's because it's not out there. It really isn't. I mean, there's maybe it's on podcasts, but you got to know where to listen. You got to know where to look. It's
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that just have no idea, and if they ever found out, it would change their lives, as you said. So,
Sometimes even when they find out, they're so darn skeptical though they won't take the first step. You know.
oh well, there's plenty of people that are that way.
Yeah.
Definitely some people that are that way. Where do you think, Matt, all the success came from for you?
I don't know because I mean I know right like it's I if I wanted to be very vanilla in general with it, it's like okay, this is what I want to do. Let's go find someone that can show me how to do it. Then let's create a plan and then just get up and do it every day. I mean, it's really kind of that simple.
Sure.
Um, just operating kind of from the law of cause and effect. You know, every action has an equal and a corresponding action to it. And there's a few books, like one that really had a big difference where I think a lot of my success came from, because I always think this way now, was called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And it's just kind of like, you do, and the metaphor that they would use is getting in shape. You know, if you go to the gym today and get on the treadmill for an hour and you come home and you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm the same shape I was when I left this morning, right?
I'm
But
just more tired now.
I'm just more tired. But, if you did that every day, would there be any doubt that you'd be in better shape at the end of the year? No, there's no doubt you would be in. And so, and then it's kind of then but if you took every other day off, it'd probably be less, and if you just went
Right.
once a week, it probably might not even be noticeable. So the whole concept around the book is that every decision matters,
Yep.
right? And so And so the decisions that you make and the decisions that you don't make all really kind of compound and create a result. And so you just want to make sure that you're making more of the right decisions than the wrong decisions.
Absolutely. I always have said to people that one of the things I've always liked about going to the gym is it presents you with decisions, right?
Mhm.
You're tired and you're pretty, it hurts, and you're faced with the decision: do I stop or do I do one more? And you start to take, and if you start to set the precedent with yourself that you always do that one more, you start to define yourself to yourself as the kind of person that when you face with the decision and it gets hard, you're the kind of person that does one more, and you know this about yourself. And what's
Mhm.
cool about the gym is there's really not these life or death consequences. Like you're not going to lose your job if you get it wrong, but you
Mhm.
can practice. You can be the kind of person that practices getting better at persevering when things get hard. And it's kind of like what you're saying, those decisions. I remember watching recently. I used to be a bodybuilder years ago, right? And so like I'm going to say something super sacrilegious amongst the bodybuilder community. It was only like a year or two ago that I watched Pumping Iron for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the one thing that stuck out to me in there was Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, the last one or two reps, those are the ones that make all the difference. And those are the ones that nobody wants to do. And
Mhm.
that stuck with me. That idea, because what you're talking about is the idea that you're like constantly becoming something, right? You're making these decisions and making these better decisions, and
Mhm.
every decision matters. Every decision changes you a little. If I decide to go to the gym today, it doesn't change me in a way that I can see. But if I keep making that decision 6 months from now, I look way different than I did before because I'm in the process of becoming. The human experience is one of becoming. This is what ethics has taught us since the beginning of time. Every
Mhm.
choice you make changes you a little bit. And
Yep.
so, what are you turning yourself into kind of becomes a big piece of this to consider.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Pumping Iron 2 was really good too.
say it again.
I said Pumping Iron 2 was also very good. Did you see that one?
I have not. The one that actually they hooked me with years ago was the Dorian Yates Blood and Guts
Mm.
workout video, which was these very Cockney accented British guys screaming at each other, and it was very interesting. The line I think it was there was an Arnold Schwarzenegger biography on Netflix recently I watched, or no, it was on Dorian Yates, and Dorian Yates was walking on stage, and the guy behind him said, as he turned to go up the stairs, his back was so big that all the light disappeared. Like he caused an eclipse in front of me,
Yeah.
and he's like, I don't belong on this. This is not even human. What's in front of me? He's
Hmm.
such a monster. So,
Yeah, he actually
uh,
lives right down the street. I've seen him every once in a while in the restaurants and
oh
stuff.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, he's not nearly the size he used to be.
No, not
He's
nearly, but he still looks good.
he's an interesting guy now. His biography was definitely an interesting one. Matt, what do you think makes you good at what you do?
Um, I think I'm very curious by nature. I'm always learning, um, and I'm always trying new things. And sometimes that's to a fault, but it created a me as a very oh, broad base of knowledge, I guess. And
Yeah,
so I kind of been able to identify what I like to do and what I don't like to do, and so I focus on the stuff I like to do and delegate the stuff that I don't like to do. And so I get to just spend all my time doing what I like to do. So I think I get really good at it for that reason.
yeah. Get good
Hmm.
at it, make enough money so you can delegate the stuff you don't want to do. So somebody else gets to do that, has to do that. Well, you can do the stuff that you like to do. I
Exactly.
love it. So, kind of an open-ended question here, Matt, and take it whatever way you want to.
Hmm.
What do you see as the opportunity in the market today?
Mm. You talked about. I think there's a huge. It's significant. I don't think there's a better place for anyone to be in the next 10 years than real estate, even if you're uncertain about it right at this very moment. And you know, there's a lot of different ideas out there. People are talking about affordability, and they're talking about just all the normal stuff. But I think there's a very basic thing that's happening right now, and I would take this back to say, um, remember Lee Iacocca? He saved the Chrysler, right? And all he really did was just kind of look at uh, demographics. of the population, what age the population was in, and what they would need at that age. And I heard him talk about this, and he said, when the baby boomers were born, this is when Gerber Baby Food came to life and became this monster company. And then the baby boomers became teenagers, and so Levi Strauss and the Ford Mustang became really popular. And then when they started families and got into their late 20s and 30s, he saw this opportunity of like, oh, they're having kids, and they're having more kids than their parents had, and they need something to cart those kids around. And he kind of invented this minivan, right? And so the minivan is what saved Chrysler. And you can see that as the baby boomers get older. So now health industry is really a big deal, and senior living and senior care are all great investments now because of that. So if you kind of take that out of his playbook and look at, say, the generations behind him, which each generation is a little bit bigger than the previous, but you look at the millennials right now, this is huge, is that the peak age of the millennial, I believe, is right at 34 years old. And that is also the average age of the first-time home buyer. Those two numbers are intersecting right now. And so we are seeing more demand for real estate than our country has ever seen in history.
And we're not doing as much.
And we haven't built as much. We are at a 10-year deficit of building.
Yep.
And so that alone, that supply and demand number right there, that represents quote unquote job security, investment security.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people that debate me. I mean, the big variable there would be the affordability of money. Do you have the money to buy it, right? So the interest rate's definitely going to have an impact on that.
They see that, Matt, but I mean, I'm gonna give you the pushback to help on that.
No, that's okay, and it's okay if you do. And some people do, some people don't. But I think the bigger thing is, if you want what someone else has got, watch what they do, watch what they don't do, and if you follow those rules, there's a very good chance you're going to get the same or something similar.
Sure.
And if you look right now, we talked about BlackRock. They're on track to own 60% of all single-family houses by 2030. Blackstone just raised $40 billion because they want to compete with BlackRock. I don't know how the BlackRock and the Blackstone are competing, but how those two companies with the same name, basically. And then if you see, just 3 weeks ago, Jeff Bezos just essentially came out of retirement to start a single-family fund. Like, you're watching the richest people in our society going after single family. So the opportunity I see is to control as many as you can right now, because that rising tide is rising and it's going to lift all boats. And I think you just want to be holding property when it does. That's my...
As long as they continue to take and make the creation of new homes more and more expensive, which the government and just about everybody seems conspiring together to take and make that happen, between the supply chain, between wages, everything. As a builder, general contractor, I say this on this podcast all the time. I can't build houses and bring them to market where the price point will support, where the comps will support the debt needed. But the thing is, with the affordability thing, the argument I've always had with the affordability thing is, how did the prices get where they are? Is it because nobody's buying them? The reason why the prices are where they are is because people are paying it. So saying it's not affordable, if it was not affordable, the inventory would be expanding, but the inventory is shrinking. So if the inventory is shrinking, obviously somebody's buying it. Just because the folks that used to be able to buy it can't buy it anymore. You want to know what happens when folks can't buy it anymore? They go somewhere else, because there used to be affordable housing in the tip of Manhattan. And what happened? That land got to be really desirable, so those folks had to move further north. Eventually, they went up in the Bronx and Brooklyn, and God knows where the hell they are now, right? Yeah. Those prices go up, and prices cause people. I love the study of economics from the standpoint of when it's explained the right way. Economics is the study of what people do when economic pressures are applied to them. You take an increased rent in an area, watch how everybody moves around, right? And so I think the affordability thing is maybe an okay argument, except that somehow people are still paying it. And as interest rates come down, which they're supposed to do, it's just going to drive more demand to a market that doesn't have enough inventory right now, which means, guess what you're going to see happen to prices? You're at an incentive to an underserved and undersupplied market. It's like, okay, we don't have enough for everybody. We're going to put it on sale now and see what happens.
That's a
It
great way
really
of putting it. I mean, I've said the same thing a million times, but I like that. Hey, everything we don't have enough, so we're going to put it on sale. That makes
is.
no sense. Yes.
Enjoy it, use it, steal it by all means. I just made it up right now, so it's not exactly like it's a
I like
trademark
it.
pending.
I like it. It's
So
inarguable logic, right? It's just and gosh, here we go. We're entering into an election year, so Biden doesn't want to have to defend all this slinging of how bad the economy is going. So he's going to do whatever he can to make the economy look good. So that's going to bring down the cost of money, and it's like I think it's just the prices of houses are just going to continue to go up for a very long time.
it would be hard to see the way. And this is the thing that when I'm talking to my agents, when I'm training my real estate agents, I say, in order for prices to come down, we have to get to some sort of a market where there's an oversupply of inventory, right?
Yep.
Prices really only come down when we have more supply than we have people ready to buy it. Then the prices have to come down to attract the buyers. So show me the path. And I walk them through the various sources of inventory that exist. Where are we going to get the inventory in or reduce the demand down to the place? Well, homes are going to become unaffordable. And well, as soon as people stop buying homes, inventory expands. And when inventory expands, the prices are going to take and regulate themselves. It's how a free market tends to
Yep.
work.
Yep.
The reason we don't have more supply of homes coming into the market is because the construction side is not a real free market. We got this constant movement with the energy efficiency guidelines to build that makes these homes more and more expensive to build. I know I've said it on this podcast before. My brother sent me a picture outside of an In-N-Out the other day. Help wanted, starting $19 an hour in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hmm.
If you're going to pay somebody to wash dishes, $19 an hour, what do I have to pay a finished carpenter? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
just
it's going to be a $35 hamburger too, in and out.
exactly. No, and people act like the cost is somehow magically not going to get passed along. They
Right.
don't understand that if that company ceases to be profitable, it's not some fat cat that's out of a job. Grandma's pension fund that she worked 40 years to take and earn that pension, they're invested in In-N-Out. And if In-N-Out has a problem like that, they stop making money. Grandma has to eat cat food now because she can't take and get her distribution. I mean, people don't understand how interconnected this whole thing is. It's the reason why, Matt, the number one book I recommend to my real estate agents is a
Hmm.
book that's not about real estate.
Mm.
I recommend a book called Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell.
Mm.
I
Oh,
look
big
as a
fan.
if you've never read Sowell, you got to read Sowell.
I want him
I,
to be president.
I do. I call him Soul Train. He's the man. He's
Yeah.
getting up there now. I mean, I don't know how old he is. He's
I
been
think
he's been
he's
pretty old
running
for a
in
pretty good.
the independent party though this year, right?
I have no idea. I think he's got to be like almost 80. I don't
Yeah.
know. He's
Well,
he's up
hey,
there, but he's a
age
rock star.
doesn't mean
So
anything when you're a president. We've proven that.
as he proved. Uh, maybe we haven't proved it yut. Actually, maybe we proved this.
We showed it was possible. That's what we showed.
The possibility has been established.
Yes.
Whether or not it's a repeatable thing, maybe we want to discuss this a little bit more.
Very funny. Totally.
No, Thomas Sowell is a good one to read. I
Yep.
mean, he does a good job of breaking it down. But
Yeah.
that in the course of doing what you've done, you've obviously learned a lot of lessons. Pain and suffering, I've always said, is one of the great educators, and that's in business. It tends to be one of your chief mentors. What's the most important thing you'd say you've learned in the process of doing what you do, man?
I think I think there's been pivotal moments in my life. I think once on my 30th birthday, I realized I don't know anything. Right. On my 40th birthday, I was like, okay, maybe I can start trusting myself. Maybe I do know a little something. Right. On my 50th birthday, I said, what I learned is like, you need to trust your gut every single time.
Yeah,
I think that's a biggie. I look back and every upset or disruption in my life, the red flags were there every single time,
yeah.
you know? And whether that was
We just
personal relationships or professional relationships or professional endeavors, I think that's like there, we are given a gift of intuition. And I think what I've learned is to trust it. And that's might have been the biggest lesson I've learned in life up to date. I don't know if that was the exact question, but that's what the first thing that came to my mind.
I hear a lot of the art of the deal in that, the go with your gut.
Oh,
thing. You got to learn to take and trust your intuition, because a lot of times you're picking up on stuff that your conscious mind is kind of going nah 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 to.
yeah, yeah.
So
And I think
I
about like
agree.
even to expand on that, you know, as I'm in business now going forward, I listen to so many other entrepreneurs and I belong to these amazing networks and some of, I mean, gosh, I'm probably the smallest fish in most of my ponds. And I'm just like, if I'm talking to them and I'm hearing them, they're saying this is like, well, they already obviously know more than I do. So why would I want to second guess them? Right.
Yep.
And let me just do what they're doing. Or if I hire someone that's better at something than me, just let them do it because that's why I hired them because they're better at it than me. God, but there's just so many times I look back, I was like, no, I should have voiced up. I should have said something. I should have
You
trusted.
asked that question I thought was a stupid question. Yeah, no, it's a thing. I
Hmm.
am telling you, I've done a lot of different business ventures, and the ones that I've got my butt kicked on are the ones where I was like, yeah, the money looked great, but it was just like,
Yeah.
I don't like this guy. I don't like the way this. And at this point, like, I will tell somebody, you know what? I don't like you. No,
Hmm.
we're not going to do this. Let's just not. All right.
Right.
You did a great thing. I wish you well. I wish you well with somebody else.
Yep. There's also
Just
a
quit.
very fine line between delegating and abdicating. That might be the second thing that I've done is I've
Okay.
abdicated. I've stepped down and just turned complete control over to someone else for a department or a project or a task type thing. Where delegating is smart, but it's at the end of the day, it's your responsibility if it gets done or not, and to not check in and not to monitor. Micromanage is kind of a bad word, but I think it's kind of essential to run a business for the long term.
I think it's providing necessary accountability. I
Yeah.
don't think that's micromanaging. I think it's
Yeah.
striking the balance, giving people enough rope to show what their chops are, but not enough that anything blows back on your reputation because something
Mhm.
that you're responsible for at the end of the day
Yeah.
didn't get done. I think
Funny
that
you
that's
said
a
the word
that's a,
reputation because that's exactly what I was talking about. So,
totally.
yep.
Look, when you embrace the idea that everything that's on your watch is on your watch and it blows back
Hmm.
on you, and you've got one reputation in this life,
Yep.
that's it. And what you do with that thing is up to you. You got to be good to your word. Otherwise, as my father would say, you're a bum.
You're a bum.
And
I
that's
like it.
it. So fighting the good fight, right? What do you
Yep.
think makes you passionate about what you do, man? You
What
seem
makes
to
me
love it.
passionate? Um, what makes me passionate about what I do? I like to build things and then watch them perform, so to speak. Like when we're marketing for our deals, I like to build a sales funnel that is going to go out and find people that are distressed in their home ownership or in situations and they're looking for a solution, and I provide a nice clear path for them to come and get that solution. Like in our education business and building the online stuff, and then building like a self-serve membership website where people can self-educate themselves. I get a and maybe that's got to go back to music where it's just part of the creativity of the whole thing. I think that's just kind of in my blood to want to build something and then watch it perform. I've never been asked that question, and don't think I've ever said that out loud before. Hopefully, I didn't say anything incriminating, but that's
Uh, I, I think the
that's
names were changed to protect the innocent.
yeah,
You should be.
exactly. But that's I'm passionate about that, and so
That is from a kid with an erector set to today. Build it and
yeah,
see it go. And there's just something, that it didn't. It was a bunch of broken pieces when I got it, and because of what I did, it now does something. I think there's definitely something that builder creator thing is a
yep,
good healthy way to use this human experience that we have. All right, a little bit of a lightning type round here.
right.
Quick answer: what are you most proud of in business that you've accomplished?
Providing a system that allows people's money to work harder for them than they did for it.
So providing something turnkey that folks wouldn't have been able to get someplace else. Love
Yep.
it, man. Same question, but instead of business, what are you most proud of in life that you've accomplished?
Oh gosh. my son's turning out to be a pretty good, upstanding individual in society, and
There you go. Making people's
really,
hard work.
a really good kid. Yeah, he's 12.
That's awesome.
And, I'm not done yet. We got to get him to be at least a good 18-year-old, but he's a pretty darn good 12-year-old.
It doesn't stop there, brother. My father's not here anymore, and I still try to make the old man proud.
Nice.
It's a thing. What one piece of advice would you give our listeners?
Gosh, I'm going to think of 10 things after we're done talking.
Of course.
I think one piece of advice, we live in a society where nothing replaces money in the way that it serves us, right? Puts the food on our back, the clothes on our back, the food on our stomach, roof over our head, pays the hospital bills, and allows us to do all those things for the people that we love. That money is really, really important. And the advice I would give is every single time you are faced with a financial transaction, ask yourself, how could I turn this into a stream of income rather than taking this mountain of cash? Now, you won't always be able to do it, but I think a good exercise is to always ask that and see if there is a way, because that steady flow of income, that recurring income, that residual income, that really allows you to live life to the fullest in the society that we live.
Sure. The money provides freedom. It gives options. Yep. You have choices. All right. What one book or a movie would you recommend? Or you can do one of each if you want to, whatever makes you happy.
If I had to choose one book, I've said the same 3 books over and over and over again, but there was a 4th book that fell into my lap about 6 years ago called Profit First, and I've added that to my 4. But I think specifically for entrepreneurs, just the whole concept of paying yourself first and then automating that payment. And it's remarkable on how quickly you accumulate and create a nice, comfortable sleep well at night account for yourself. Mm-hmm. So that book, Profit First, by Mike Michalowicz. I think that was. Have you heard of it?
I don't know it, and I'm actually going to write it down. Okay. I read a lot of books, and
I've always said "Awaken the Giant Within" with Tony Robbins. I've always said "Rich Dad Poor Dad," and I've always said "The Slight Edge." Those 3 are just like they created me, who I am in business. But not until I read Profit First did I actually start getting to keep a lot more of the money that I made.
And that really should be one of the key things that you're shooting to do, is not just make it, but keep it.
It's one of those logical things, kind of like we were talking about with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I could make a definition of what passive income is, but until you're taught to go out and create it with intention, it doesn't really make a difference. And this Profit First, like, it's logical to pay yourself first, but until you set up a system that actually does it with intention, you don't really benefit from it. It doesn't make a difference until you do that.
Totally makes sense. All right. Simpler question. Definitely a change of topic. What do you do to unwind?
Play a lot of golf and drink a lot of wine.
All right. There we go. Yeah. Hopefully not simultaneously.
Oh, well, it depends on the day.
Get away with it. All right. So, Matt, you're a busy guy. It seems like you got a lot going on. I'm assuming there is a next project in the work. What's next for you?
The next is I want to looking at business acquisition of more recurring revenue. So I'm looking for businesses that most likely will be software based. So that's a new venture. That's a new topic. It's a new subject for me, and so I'm spending a lot of time learning about that.
Nice. Yep. Matt, where can folks find you?
EpicRealEstate.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, Matt, that is the gauntlet. You have survived all of my questions, and I think you've provided some great stuff for all of our listeners here. Matt, thank you so much for your time and for hanging out with us and for all the wisdom that you provided us with.
You bet, Josh. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Let's stay in touch.
Will do. All right, everybody. This is me, Josh Cadillac, signing out from Know Your Shit podcast, reminding you got to commit to pay the most expensive bill in life. You got to commit to pay attention. You got to know what the hell you're talking about. You got to know your shit. Till next time, guys.